They erased the true story of Cleopatra from every history book you ever read, leaving behind a legacy of deceit and misrepresentation that has persisted for centuries. You've been fed a diet of myths and half-truths about this ancient queen, but the real Cleopatra was a far cry from the seductress of legend. Her story is one of politics, power, and propaganda, a tale of how one of history's greatest rulers was transformed into a caricature of herself. As you sit in the comfort of your own home, surrounded by the familiar trappings of modern life, it's hard to imagine a world where the truth was so deliberately distorted, where the very fabric of history was manipulated to serve the interests of the powerful. Cleopatra VII, the last active pharaoh of ancient Egypt, was a mastermind of politics, a shrewd and calculating leader who navigated the treacherous waters of the ancient world with ease. She was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek family that ruled Egypt after the death of Alexander the Great. Yes, you heard that right, Greek, not Egyptian. Despite what you may have learned in school, Cleopatra was not Egyptian by blood, but rather a descendant of the Macedonian Greeks who had conquered the region. This fact alone challenges the traditional narrative of Cleopatra as a quintessential Egyptian queen, and it's a distinction that has significant implications for our understanding of her life and reign. As you begin to peel back the layers of myth and misinformation, you'll start to see a very different picture of Cleopatra emerge, one that is both fascinating and unsettling. You've probably heard the stories about Cleopatra's legendary beauty, her supposed ability to seduce men with a single glance. But what if I told you that these stories were nothing more than Roman propaganda, designed to discredit and demean a powerful female leader who threatened the authority of the Roman Empire? The Romans were masters of psychological warfare, and they used every tool at their disposal to undermine Cleopatra's reputation and justify their own imperial ambitions. They portrayed her as a manipulative seductress, a woman who used her charms to influence men and further her own interests. But the truth is far more complex, and it's a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about this ancient queen. Can you imagine what it would be like to be the subject of such a relentless smear campaign, to have your reputation torn apart by the very people who sought to destroy you? As you delve deeper into the world of ancient politics, you'll begin to see the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that defined the Mediterranean world. Cleopatra was a skilled diplomat and strategist, able to navigate the complex landscape of ancient geopolitics with ease. She formed alliances with powerful Roman leaders, including Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and she used her intelligence and charm to secure Egypt's position as a major player in the region. But despite her many successes, Cleopatra was also a target of intense hatred and resentment, particularly among the Roman elite who saw her as a threat to their power and prestige. They portrayed her as a foreigner, a barbarian queen who was unfit to rule, and they used every opportunity to undermine her authority and discredit her reputation. You're starting to see a very different picture of Cleopatra emerge, one that is both captivating and disturbing. What would happen if you were to uncover a dark secret about Cleopatra's past, something that would challenge everything you thought you knew about her? The city of Alexandria, Cleopatra's capital, was a center of learning and culture, a place where scholars and intellectuals from all over the ancient world came to study and share ideas. It was a city of grandeur and beauty, with towering temples and majestic palaces that seemed to stretch on forever. But beneath the surface of this glittering metropolis, a different story was unfolding, one of intrigue and deception, of politics and betrayal. Cleopatra was a shrewd and calculating leader, always looking for ways to consolidate her power and secure her position. She was a master of manipulation, able to use her intelligence and charm to influence those around her and get what she wanted. But she was also a woman of great passion and conviction, driven by a fierce determination to protect her kingdom and her people. As you explore the winding streets and bustling marketplaces of Alexandria, you'll start to feel the weight of history bearing down upon you, the sense that you're walking in the footsteps of giants. What secrets would you uncover if you were to dig deeper into the ancient ruins of this forgotten city? You're starting to realize that the traditional narrative of Cleopatra's life is nothing more than a myth, a carefully constructed fiction designed to serve the interests of the Roman Empire. The Romans were masters of propaganda, using their control of the media to shape public opinion and manipulate the narrative of history. They portrayed Cleopatra as a villain, a power-hungry seductress who was determined to destroy Rome and dominate the Mediterranean world. But the truth is far more nuanced, a complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined the ancient world. Cleopatra was a skilled politician and diplomat, able to navigate the treacherous waters of international relations with ease. She was a leader of great vision and determination, driven by a fierce passion to protect her kingdom and her people. As you begin to see the world through her eyes, you'll start to feel a sense of awe and respect for this ancient queen, a sense of wonder at her intelligence and her courage. But what would happen if you were to stumble upon a hidden text, an ancient manuscript that revealed a dark and sinister secret about Cleopatra's reign? The Roman Empire was a vast and powerful force, a behemoth of military might and economic strength that seemed invincible. But despite its many successes, the empire was also a place of great corruption and decadence, a world of excess and indulgence that was ripe for collapse. Cleopatra, with her intelligence and her charm, was a threat to the very foundations of Roman power, a challenge to the authority of the emperor and the elite who ruled the empire. They portrayed her as a barbarian, a foreigner who was unfit to rule, and they used every opportunity to undermine her reputation and discredit her authority. But Cleopatra was not one to be underestimated, and she fought back against her enemies with every tool at her disposal. She was a master of propaganda, using her own network of spies and informants to spread rumors and half-truths about her enemies. She was a skilled diplomat, able to form alliances with powerful Roman leaders and secure Egypt's position as a major player in the region. As you watch her navigate the treacherous waters of ancient politics, you'll start to feel a sense of admiration for this ancient queen, a sense of wonder at her intelligence and her courage. What would you do if you were faced with the same challenges and obstacles that Cleopatra faced, if you had to fight for your very survival in a world of ancient politics and intrigue? The Battle of Actium was a turning point in Cleopatra's reign, a decisive defeat that marked the beginning of the end of her kingdom. The Roman Empire, under the leadership of Octavian, had launched a devastating attack on Egypt, determined to crush Cleopatra and her allies once and for all. The battle was fierce and intense, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But in the end, it was Cleopatra who emerged defeated, her fleet destroyed and her army broken. As she sailed away from the battlefield, her heart must have been heavy with grief and despair. She knew that her kingdom was doomed, that the Roman Empire would stop at nothing to destroy her and her people. The thought of her children, her loved ones, and her people being slaughtered or enslaved must have been unbearable. And yet, even in the face of such overwhelming defeat, Cleopatra refused to give up. She continued to fight, using every trick in the book to try and turn the tide of the battle. But it was too late, the die had been cast, and her fate was sealed. As you watch her struggle to come to terms with her defeat, you'll start to feel a sense of sadness and regret, a sense of loss for this ancient queen who fought so bravely against overwhelming odds. What would you do if you were faced with the same level of defeat and despair, if you had to come to terms with the loss of everything you held dear? The final days of Cleopatra's reign were marked by tragedy and heartbreak, a desperate struggle to survive in a world that seemed determined to destroy her. She had retreated to her palace in Alexandria, surrounded by her loyal guards and advisors. But even here, she was not safe, for the Roman Empire was closing in on all sides. Octavian's army had surrounded the city, cutting off all escape routes and preparing for the final assault. Cleopatra knew that her time was running out, that she had to act quickly if she was to save herself and her kingdom. She tried to negotiate with Octavian, offering him a deal that would spare her life and allow her to rule Egypt as a Roman client state. But Octavian was not interested, he wanted total victory, and he was determined to crush Cleopatra and her kingdom once and for all. As you watch her desperate struggle to survive, you'll start to feel a sense of tension and anxiety, a sense of impending doom that hangs over the city like a cloud. What would you do if you were trapped in a desperate situation like Cleopatra, with no escape and no way out? The death of Cleopatra is one of the most enduring myths of ancient history, a legend that has been passed down for centuries. According to the traditional narrative, she died by allowing a poisonous asp to bite her, rather than submit to the humiliation of being paraded as a captive in Octavian's triumphal procession. But is this really what happened, or is it just another example of Roman propaganda, designed to discredit and demean this ancient queen? The truth is that we'll never know for sure, for the records of Cleopatra's death are shrouded in mystery and intrigue. But one thing is certain, she died a tragic and untimely death, a victim of the ruthless ambition and greed of the Roman Empire. As you reflect on her life and legacy, you'll start to feel a sense of sadness and regret, a sense of loss for this ancient queen who fought so bravely against overwhelming odds. What would you do if you were to uncover a dark secret about Cleopatra's death, something that would challenge everything you thought you knew about this ancient queen? The legacy of Cleopatra is a complex and multifaceted thing, a tapestry of myth and legend that has been woven and unwoven over the centuries. She was a queen, a politician, a diplomat, and a leader, a woman of great intelligence and courage who fought against overwhelming odds to protect her kingdom and her people. But she was also a symbol of female power and authority in a world dominated by men. Her story has been told and retold, distorted and manipulated, used to serve the interests of those who sought to control and dominate. But despite all the myths and legends, despite all the propaganda and distortion, Cleopatra remains a fascinating and captivating figure, a woman of great strength and determination who continues to inspire and awe us to this day. As you finish this journey into the forgotten darkness of Cleopatra's life, you'll start to feel a sense of wonder and respect for this ancient queen, a sense of awe at her intelligence and her courage. And you'll be left with a haunting question, one that will linger in your mind long after the credits roll. What other secrets and lies are hidden in the shadows of history, waiting to be uncovered?